I want to tell you something right now. If you take nothing else from me that will be related to writing your findings that will get you done quicker, is do not leave interpretations of your data up to the reader. Here's why. Your reader may get those interpretations wrong. You want to inform the reader about what they should interpret from the data that you have. This is why it's important not to just dump all of your findings. You want to curate them. Have you collected your data and just feel like you're swimming in it and not quite sure how you're going to be able to write up the findings because it's just so much to take in with all the data that you have? If so, you're going to want to watch this episode of From ABD to PhD Show. This is our fourth video in a five-part video series titled Based on a True Dissertation, where we're talking about aspects of the research process that hold doctoral students from finishing and giving you some actionable strategies that have worked for our clients in the Velocity Coaching Program and those we have worked with in our various workshops to get them through that particular aspect of the research journey. And so on today's episode, we are going to talk about all things related to the findings and in particular, how to write your findings and get out of data dump land. And being in data dump land is not where you want to be at all. And so I'm looking forward to this episode. And my name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation and host of this show. And at Done Dissertation, our goal is to help doctoral students get unstuck by demystifying the dissertation process so that they can write their dissertation in record time. And so, with that said, one of the things when you're trying to get out of the dissertation process, at some point, you got to write up those findings, right? You did all this work. You got as we did in our five-part series, we got through the theoretical framework, we got our research problem, we got all those things aligned. We wrote up our literature review. We used the UTIP process that we taught in video, episode number 2. Episode number 3, we talked about the IRB. We got through IRB approval. We did all those things. Now we got in our data. But the last part is writing up those findings, right? And it can feel just so overwhelming that when you're trying to write up the findings, you're like, shoot, what do I do with all this data? And so I'm going to give you some strategy and things that you can do, and two challenges in particular that you will experience, and then how to overcome them based on what we have found from case studies of our own clients. And so when we think about this, I want to get some kind of foundation out here first about what is the purpose of writing up your findings chapters or sections in your dissertation. This can even go for a journal article. I want to give you three things in terms of what the goals are and then what makes these chapters effective. And it's these three kind of pillars, I believe. Is that first is that your findings chapter actually answers the research question. That is critical. It should answer the question. 2 is that you're able to use and tell a story of your data. So you got to be able to do that. And then third, you're able to bring yourself into the analysis and have your interpretation. Because, and again, I'm going to share some challenges with you all related to these three pillars. But, the thing that you have to consider is that you first have to answer your research question. Like, there's no need to do a dissertation to do all that work to collect the data and you don't answer your question. And so this is going to be extremely important as you're thinking through this process, because one of the first challenges that I'm going to share with you all that we see happening when folks start to work with us when they're writing up their findings is that when we read the first draft, a lot of times what we will see is that the challenge is that they have dumped everything into the findings. And so what it just reads is like what we call a data dump. And so what that looks like is that you just pile everything in there. Let's say if we were doing a qualitative study, what this would look like is that you might say, participant A explained, insert quote, long quote. Then right after that quote, participant B explained, long quote. Participant C, long quote. It's just a laundry list of quotes. And sometimes in statistical analysis, if you're presenting quantitative data, you might just list all the analysis that you ran and just keep listing that and give us the statistic, but you don't tell us what it means. So when that happens, that's a challenge for you as a doc student when you're going about dumping everything into your findings section, because you don't want to dump everything. You actually want to more so what I would call, you want to actually curate your findings. Because again, you have a specific research aim, right? Your questions have really given you kind of a parameter in which to work within. So the data that you present in your findings should only be related and tied back to your research question. If you have data that is unrelated, hold that data and don't present it in your dissertation. If you want, write another our research article using that data after you earn your doctorate. Honestly, that's how a lot of times folks develop new research areas, and dissertations are one project kind of version. So don't feel like, oh my God, I got all this data, I have to report all the data in your dissertation. You do not. You as the researcher get to pick and choose what data gets reported. You know, not to say that you're going to be unethical about it, right? So you're going to report, you're not going to say and remove, let's say, for instance, I see people do this in quant work when you have a large data set, you'll remove a certain number of cases to make your findings more significant. No, you don't want to necessarily do that per se, but maybe there's certain variables that you collected on, but you just don't need to report them because they're not really related to the dissertation project. Those things happen all the time. So you really want to consider that because this is a challenge when we see folks just dump all their information in, and I just read it like, what am I supposed to take from this? I don't understand. It's just data, but I don't know. I don't see where you're telling a story about your data or bringing yourself into the analysis. So we don't know exactly what we're supposed to take away from this. So this is a challenge that you're going to want to quickly figure out a way to overcome because it's going to be really important. And this is something that we coach and work with our clients a lot in our velocity coaching program to help them deal with. Yeah, I can remember one of our clients in particular did this their first round. And then what it ended up happening, I just had to show them an article in a dissertation where they had a similar topic, but how they presented their findings in a very different manner. And once they see it, I think a lot of times as doctors, once you see it, it's quite easy to adapt your writing to fit that style. And so sometimes what you may have to do in order to prevent the data dump is that you may have to go and read pieces that report data similar to what you're trying to report to see how do they do it, how does it read, how do they write it up, and then emulate the style. It's okay to emulate. Like we all do it as writers, and I think you should definitely do the same. So that's the first challenge. Now, the second challenge I want you to consider, and before we get to that, I want to make sure that if you're someone who is finding value so far, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube, and also send this out to some colleagues who you think could learn from this. Now, challenge number 2 is that you are, trying to leave your data interpretations to your reader. I want to tell you something right now. If you take nothing else from me that will be related to writing your findings that will get you done quicker, is do not leave interpretations of your data up to the reader. Here's why. Your reader may get those interpretations wrong and come to a different conclusion that you did because you didn't tell them. So as a informed researcher who has done this work, who is an expert in this area because you collected the data, you've done all this grueling research, you want to inform the reader about what they should interpret from the data that you have. This is why it's important not to just dump all of your findings. You want to curate them, and you want to give the interpretation of what should the reader take away from these findings. So let's say in a statistical analysis, let's say for instance, in a study I ran a MANOVA, we're looking at between group differences or within group differences, right? And we may report the F statistic. Whatever it is significant. If we stopped there, that would be a data dump. However, usually we'll have another sentence that comes after it that says, based on this statistic, this is what the differences were between the group and how we should interpret what this finding means. Like you got to take it up a step. We just don't want to report data. Qualitatively, what this looks like is sometimes we may provide a quote from a participant, and then after the quote, if we move to the next participant, that's data dumping. But if we, after the quote, give some context, talk about the interpretation, why did they say this? What was happening to them in their journey that helps give context for the quote? Like all those things to tell a story about your data takes your findings up a notch. And probably what's holding you back if you are in a boat where your professor is saying, hey, these findings are just like kind of data dumps. And like, I don't really see you in this. I don't see the interpretation. That's what they're getting at. And that's an inherent challenge of writing up your findings. And this is something that what we take a lot of time of doing with our velocity clients to help them get to the finish line is because of this. And, it takes a lot of encouragement, it takes a lot of support, but it takes a strategy. And a lot of times it's not that you can't do it. Sometimes you just don't have the strategy and you don't have the feedback in order to do so. And that's what we do in our velocity program is that we actually provide you with the feedback in order to help you improve writing up your findings. And so if that's the case and you are someone who is looking for and needs that type of support, I would encourage you to apply to the Velocity Coaching Program. You can go to www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about what we do and how we can help you get to the finish line. Because when you're at this findings point, when we're working with you, we're looking to get you done within the next 4 months. Within whatever semester that you're writing, you need to be done. And that will be our goal when you come to work with us. So we have a targeted deadline, a targeted date to get you to graduation. Especially when you're at this point, when you're writing up your findings, like this is really important and we want to get you done quickly. And we can once you have our strategy. And so make sure that you lock in with us. Go to the website, learn more about what we do, because we want to help you all get to the finish line. And again, in today's episode, when we're writing the findings, we want to overcome that first challenge of just dumping all of our data. We don't want to do that. We don't want it to read like a laundry list. We want to read like a curated synthesis of this data. We're curating this process. We're kind of curating the vibe, if you will, for the findings. And so you want to be the person that curates that vibe correctly. Then this with the second challenge of leaving their interpretation of your data up to the reader, we want to take it up a level that we're not just going to just showcase what we found. We're going to actually provide the insight as to how the reader should interpret what we found. I promise you, when you start doing that, that's going to take it up a notch. Of course, in your next chapter, in your discussion, you're going to then say, what does my interpretation mean in relationship to the data? But at least in your findings, you're going to give the reader the interpretation of, based on this finding, here's what this means for this participant, or here's a context we need to understand in order to understand this finding. Those are the things that you curate as a researcher. And so I want you all to be able to do so. But again, you may be in a boat where you may need more of a hands-on support to do that. And if so, scan the QR code, reach out to us at www.velocitydissertation.com so that we can help get you to the finish line. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings. I'm founder of Done Dissertation. And our goal is to help you get unstuck by demystifying the dissertation process so that you can write and defend your dissertation in record time. And with that said, I want you to watch the next episode, number 5, our final episode of this 5-part series on, the insights from true dissertations about publishing. So how do we turn your dissertation into publication? Because if you follow, videos 1 through 4 of the series, when you get to the last one, I want you to be able to turn those dissertations into journal articles. And so make sure you tap in and watch next week's episode so that we can help you get to the finish line with actually writing for publication. And so with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. And until next time, I wish you all a done dissertation. Take care.